The galaxy had seen many empires rise and fall, but none shone as long as the Empire of Cthulhu. Their towers touched the light of stars. Their cities floated in the sky like great lanterns. For 10,000 years, their flame burned bright. Now, for the first time in history, that light began to fade. The human ship Aurora entered orbit above CosmicAdventures. The blue and gold planet looked calm from space, but everyone in the crew knew what was happening on the surface. The Emperor of Cthulhu was dying, and with him, his people's starflame. No other species had been invited into the royal palace, except one human commander, Marcus Hale, stood by the main window of the ship, his hands behind his back. He was tall and quiet, with the kind of calm that came from years of facing impossible missions. He had seen dying colonies, broken worlds, in the aftermath of wars. But this felt different. This was not a battle. This was something sacred. A soft chime sounded behind him. A young ensign spoke carefully. "Commander, the Cthulhu delegation is ready. They will bring you to the throne hall." Marcus nodded once. "Tell them I'm ready." The humans on board were under strict orders not to interfere with the royal ceremony. But Marcus knew that sometimes history didn't care about rules. Sometimes it waited for one person to step forward. The sacred hall, the Palace of Cthulhu, was a place built for stars. Its walls shimmered like flowing glass. Gold light ran through the floors like rivers. At the center of the royal chamber burned the great flame, a tall column of soft fire, not hot, not cold, but alive. It glowed like a sunrise trapped in crystal. Marcus walked slowly behind the royal escort. They wore robes, made of living light that changed colors as they moved. None of them spoke. The silence felt heavy, like the air before a storm. When he entered the throne hall, he saw the emperor for the first time. The old ruler lay on a throne of silver roots that seemed to grow out of the floor itself. His skin was like stone carved by time, his eyes bright as distant stars. Beside him stood the princess, young, tall, graceful, with golden marks like flame running down her face. Her crown was made of flickering light. As Marcus approached, the great flame flickered. A cold wind moved through the chamber, and every alien bowed their head. The emperor lifted his hands slowly, his fingers shaking like leaves in a storm. "Human." The emperor's voice echoed like deep water. "You have come." Marcus stopped before the throne and bowed slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Good," the emperor whispered. "Then listen well." The entire court went silent. Even the flames seemed to lean toward the throne. "A final request. My time is ending," the emperor said. "And with my life, so too ends our flame. Our people are tied to it. When it dies, Cthulhu will be no more. The stars will forget us." The princess closed her eyes, holding back tears. She placed her hand on the emperor's arm gently. But he kept speaking. "In our oldest prophecies, there is a whisper of a spark from the youngest race, a race that walks without fear, a race that takes the cold and makes it burn. We thought it was a dream, a story to comfort dying kings." He looked straight into Marcus's human eyes. "Now the flame flickers, and a human stands before my throne. I have but one request." The emperor raised his voice, though it was weak. "Kindle my daughter's flame, human." The words fell heavy in the air. Marcus didn't move. He didn't fully understand what the emperor meant, but everyone else in the room gasped softly. It was a sacred sentence. No outsider had ever been asked such a thing. The princess took a deep breath. "Father." The emperor turned to her. "Child of the flame, the time has come. If the ember dies, your people will fade. If the spark lives, Cthulhu will rise again." Marcus's mind raced. He was a commander, not a mystic. He didn't know their rituals. He didn't know their flame. But he did know what it meant when someone looked at him with the hope of an entire people. The flame's secret after the ceremony ended. Marcus was taken to the quiet garden behind the palace. It wasn't a garden of plants, but of soft light and floating stones. The princess walked beside him, silent at first. "You don't understand what my father asked," she finally said. Marcus shook his head. "No, but I want to." She stopped and looked up at the night sky, where stars burned like candles. Our flame is not just a fire. It is the core of our being. Every life of Cthulhu is connected to it. When a ruler dies, the flame passes to the next through the rite of kindling. But this time, her voice trembled. The flame is too weak. I cannot light it alone. And you want me to? Help? Marcus asked carefully. Not want, she whispered. Need. The princess turned to face him fully. No other empire will help us. They say our ways are too old, too dangerous. But your people? She paused, searching for the right word. You humans have a strange gift. You don't worship fire. You make it. Marcus looked at the sky again. His ancestors had once made fire from sticks and stones. Later, they made it from stars. Humanity's story was, in a way, a story of flames. Why me? Marcus asked. The princess smiled sadly. Because when every other world closed its doors, yours didn't, because your people built homes on dead rocks and made them shine. Because you are reckless. Marcus let out a small laugh. That part's true. Echoes of the past, the princess walked on, her steps light on the floating stones. When I was a child, she said softly, my father told me the flame would never go out. It had burned for 10,000 years, but nothing lives forever, not even stars. Marcus listened. He had grown up on a mining colony on Mars. He remembered cold nights and the hum of generators keeping the air warm. He remembered stories about Earth's first explorers, people who had nothing but kept moving forward. Maybe this was why he was here. Not because he was the best soldier, but because he understood what it meant to keep a light alive in the dark. They reached a small platform overlooking the great flame. From here, Marcus could see how dim it had become. It flickered like a candle almost spent. Tomorrow, the princess said, the guardians will test you. If you pass, the flame may accept you. If not, she didn't finish the sentence. Marcus didn't ask what happened if he failed. He already knew. The light would go out. And with it, a whole people. The Galactic Council later that night, Marcus sat alone in the chamber assigned to him. A soft blue light glowed from the ceiling. On the wall, a holoscreen displayed the faces of the Galactic Council, the other species watching from afar. They didn't look sad. They looked tired. Commander Hale, a tall, gray-skinned ambassador, said, We advise you not to involve yourself in the rite of kindling. It is an internal matter. Another voice added, If the flame goes out, it is simply the natural end of an era. Marcus clenched his jaw. He hated that word, natural. It was the same word the council had used when colonies died, because no one wanted to help. He remembered the faces of families who had waited for aid that never came. Understood, he said flatly. But in his heart, he had already made his choice. When the call ended, Marcus whispered to himself, We don't watch the fire die. We make it burn again. The test of Wertha next morning, the sky of Cthulhu, was gold and quiet. The princess led Marcus through a long corridor that opened into a vast, circular chamber. Tall statues of ancient rulers lined the walls. In the center floated a ring of fire. These are the guardians, the princess said softly. Figures made of pure flame appeared around the ring. They were not alive in the human sense. They were memories, old protectors of the flame. Their voices were like wind and thunder together. Why does a human come? One guardian asked. Marcus stepped forward. Because I was asked. The flames flickered. Another voice spoke. Why should a spark from a young race touch the flame of stars? Marcus took a breath. Because when your stars were bright, we were still learning to walk in the dark. But we learned fast. We learned to build, to burn, to keep going. That's what humans do. The flames whispered among themselves. Finally, one voice said, Then prove it. The ring of fire widened. A path appeared, made of light, suspended in nothing. Marcus stepped onto it. Heat brushed against his skin, but it didn't burn. It felt like standing too close to the sun. As he walked, images rose around him. A test. He saw storms, deserts, empty void. The The path shook, but he kept going. He remembered nights on Mars when the power almost went out, and people huddled together around weak heaters. They didn't give up then. He wouldn't give up now. At the end of the path, a single ember floated in the air. It was small and fragile, but it was warm. Marcus reached out slowly and cupped his hand around it. The ember did not burn him. It pulsed softly like a heartbeat. A voice filled the chamber. The flame remembers courage. The guardians bowed. For the first time in centuries, they accepted someone not of Ka, a shared spark. The princess waited for him outside the chamber. When Marcus stepped out, the ember floated above his hand, glowing brighter than before. Her eyes widened. She placed her hand over his, and for a moment the flame split, half in his hand, half in hers. "It accepted you," she whispered. Marcus nodded. "Then we can still save it." The princess smiled, but it was a tired smile. "The real kindling begins tomorrow. We must reach the heart of the forge. No outsider has ever entered it." "Then I'll be the first," Marcus said simply. Night before the fire that night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He stood at the balcony overlooking the dim flame of the palace. The stars above Cthulhu were strange and sharp, like frozen fire. He thought about Earth, about humanity, about all the times they had stood on the edge of survival with nothing but stubborn will to push forward. Maybe that was why the Emperor had chosen him. Not because he was special, but because humans didn't wait for permission to keep the light alive. A soft voice spoke behind him. "Can't sleep?" The princess had come quietly. She stood beside him, looking at the same sky. "I keep thinking," Marcus said slowly. "What happens if we fail?" She shook her head gently. "Do not think of failure. Think of the flame." She closed her eyes and placed her hand over the small ember still glowing near his heart. "My people believe the flame carries memory, but maybe it also carries hope." Marcus looked at her and then at the stars. "Then let's give it something to remember." Promise made as dawn broke. The flame flickered again, weaker than ever. The royal court gathered. The Emperor, pale and thin now, raised his head from the throne one last time. His voice was faint but clear. "Human, do not let our fire die." Marcus bowed deeply. "I won't." The princess stepped forward. Her crown of light dimmed, but her eyes burned bright. She placed her hand in his. Together, they walked toward the great gates of the forge. Every alien in the hall watched them go. Some whispered. Some prayed. Some turned away, believing it was already too late. But Marcus did not look back. He wasn't walking toward death. He was walking toward a flame. The gates of the forge of Cthulhu, was not built by hands. It was carved inside a star's heart and moved to the planet long ago. Its gates were made of black stone that shimmered with gold veins. No outsider had ever passed through them. Until now, the princess placed her palm on the door. The gold lines lit up. Slowly, the gates began to open, revealing a spiral of light that went deep underground. "This is where the flame was born," she said softly. Marcus stared into the glowing tunnel. He didn't know what waited for him inside, but he knew what was at stake. The princess looked at him. "Are you ready?" Marcus took a deep breath. "No, but I'll go anyway." For the first time, she laughed. A small, soft laugh. That is a very human answer. They stepped forward together. The gates closed behind them with a sound like a heartbeat. Above, the great flame trembled. Below, the ember in Marcus's chest burned brighter. Somewhere deep inside the forge, the ancient flame waited. And for the first time in its long history, human was coming to meet it. The tunnel of the ancient forge felt alive. The walls glowed with soft gold lines that moved like rivers. The floor was warm, and the air hummed with energy. Marcus Hale walked slowly, following the princess down the spiraling path. The ember inside his chest pulsed softly with every step. It was not painful, just strange, like holding a small sun in his heart. "This place is older than any world," the princess whispered as they descended. "Our first ruler carried the flame here from the core of a newborn star. It has burned for 10,000 years." Marcus touched the wall gently. And now it's fading. Yes, she said softly. If the heart of the flame goes dark, it can never return. The tunnel opened into a great chamber deep beneath CosmicAdventures. It was round and vast, larger than any ship hangar Marcus had ever seen. In the center floated the flame core, a sphere of light, once blazing, now dim. Around it stood tall black spires covered in golden script. Each spire was like a piece of an ancient machine built by hands that no longer existed. Marcus stared at the core. It looked like a star trying not to die. The fading light. The princess stepped forward and bowed deeply to the core. Her crown flickered weakly. "This is the heart of my people," she said. "If it goes out, everything we are will be only memory." Marcus moved closer. The heat was soft, like a warm breeze. He could feel the ember inside his chest answering the core's weak light. "It's like it's calling me," Marcus said quietly. The princess nodded. "It knows you now. The Guardians accepted you. You carry part of its spark." Marcus took a slow breath. "Then let's give it everything we've got." But the forge was not just a chamber. It was a system, half sacred, half machine. The black spires were old reactors powered by star energy. They had not been touched in centuries. Many of them were cold. The princess walked around the chamber. Her light touched old runes, and they glowed weakly, but could not rise. "My power is not enough," she whispered. "I cannot awaken them." Marcus knelt beside a spire. To the Cthulhu people, this was holy ground. But to him, it was also a puzzle. He ran his hand along a smooth panel, finding a small, circular opening hidden behind a layer of gold. His engineer's instinct took over. "I think these aren't just decorations," he said. "They're controls." The princess looked at him, surprised. "Controls?" "Yeah, old ones. Mechanical. You've been praying to something that's also a machine." She hesitated. To her, this forge was sacred. But then she remembered her father's face, the way the light in the throne room had dimmed. "If it saves the flame," she said softly, "then use whatever you must." Marcus smiled. "Good. Let's light it up." Wakening the forge, Marcus pulled out a small pack from his belt. Not a weapon, but a human toolkit. The Cthulhu guards watching from above whispered among themselves. To them, it looked like he was trying to fix a star with tools fit for a ship's engine. He opened the panel carefully. Inside, old circuits and shining threads of gold pulsed faintly. It was like opening a sleeping heart. He connected a small human power cell. A light blinked. A low sound filled the chamber. "It's waking," Marcus said with a small grin. One spire lit up fully, then another. The chamber trembled softly. The princess covered her mouth. "No one has touched the forge in thousands of years." "Well," Marcus said lightly, "someone should have." She gave him a look, half scolding. Half amazed, he moved from spire to spire, connecting his power cell to each. The forge began to breathe again. The floor glowed brighter. The core pulsed, still weak, but responding. The princess stepped to the center, raising her hands. Her crown flared with the last of her strength. The core sent out soft waves of gold light. But it wasn't enough. "Not yet. It needs more than energy," Marcus said, standing beside her. "It needs a spark." The flame's heart, the princess placed both hands on the core. The gold light around her dimmed further, like a candle fighting a storm. "This is the rite of kindling," she whispered. "I offer it everything I am." Marcus placed his hand over hers. The ember inside him burned hot, not with pain, but with purpose. It reached toward the core like it wanted to leap out of him. The princess gasped softly. "You carry a piece of it. It recognizes you." Marcus nodded. "Then we do this together." The chamber darkened. The core's last light began to fade. The black spires shook. Dust fell from the ceiling like snow. The great flame above the palace was weakening too, miles away, as if the entire world was holding its breath. The princess whispered in her own language, a soft, musical sound. Marcus didn't understand the words, but he felt their meaning. A prayer, a promise, a farewell to darkness. Then he whispered back, not in her language, but in his own. We don't give up. Memories of fire. The ember in Marcus's chest began to burn brighter. Light flowed from him into the core, and something unexpected happened. He saw visions, not of Cthulhu, but of Earth. He saw the first humans discovering fire on a cold night. He saw engines roaring on launch pads. He saw cities lit at midnight. He saw people huddled around small lights, refusing to be swallowed by the dark. The flame was showing him his own world. It was listening to his memories, and then it reached deeper. He saw the Cthulhu people building the forge long ago, shaping fire from the star. He saw their joy, their pride, their songs. He saw generations passing their light from one to the next. The core wasn't just a machine. It was a memory. It wanted to be remembered. Two flames become one, the princess cried out softly. Her strength was fading. Marcus held her hand tighter. Stay with me, he whispered. She opened her eyes, gold light shining weakly. I'm here. Their lights, one human, one alien, wrapped around the dying core like two hands protecting a fragile candle. And slowly, something began to change. The core trembled. Its light flickered. Then, for the first time in many years, it pulsed with a steady beat. The ember inside Marcus burned so hot he could barely breathe. But he didn't let go. He thought of Earth, of the first fire, of everything humans had ever done to keep a spark alive, and the core answered, the chamber filled with gold light. One by one, the spires awakened fully. The floor blazed with ancient energy. The forge roared softly, not like a storm but like a sunrise. The princess fell to her knees, crying. As the flame rose higher, Marcus stood, shaking, but smiling. We did it, he said. The return of the flame far above the forge. In the royal palace, the great flame suddenly flared. The cold wind vanished. Light filled the throne hall, bright and warm. The old emperor opened his eyes weakly, and for a moment, he saw the flame his ancestors had built blaze once more. Around the city, Cthulhu people looked up at the sky as gold light spread like dawn. The stars seemed to shine brighter. In the forge chamber, Marcus fell to one knee. The ember in his chest was no longer burning wildly. It had settled a steady, warm glow. The princess rose slowly, her crown now shining like a small sun. She touched the core gently. It lives, she whispered. Marcus gave a tired laugh. Told you humans are good with fire. A new beginning. Hours later, the emperor was carried to the throne room for one last time. The princess stood beside him, her light blazing brighter than any ruler before her. The great flames stood tall behind the throne, alive and steady. The royal court gathered. The guardians appeared as tall figures of gold fire. And Marcus Hale, a human far from home, stood at the edge of the hall, still in his simple black uniform. The emperor raised a trembling hand. My people, the flame has returned. We owe our future not to old stars, but to a spark from a young world. The court bowed their heads. The princess turned to Marcus. Step forward. Marcus walked slowly to the foot of the throne. The princess lifted the crown of fire. You carried the flame when even I could not. From this day, your people and mine are bound by light. She reached down and placed a single burning ring around his wrist. It did not burn. It was warm like a hearth on a cold night. Human, she said clearly, her voice strong now. You are named Bearer of the Ember. The chamber echoed with soft music as the court bowed. Marcus didn't know what to say. He wasn't a king. He wasn't a hero. He was just someone who didn't walk away when the light was dying, the last whisper of the emperor later. When the court was gone, Marcus stood quietly beside the emperor's bed. The old ruler was fading fast, but his eyes were calm. You gave my daughter a chance, the emperor whispered. Marcus shook his head. No, she gave it to herself. I just helped. The emperor smiled weakly. That is what true strength is. Not power alone, but the courage to stand with another. Your people. You are reckless, yes. But perhaps that is what the galaxy needs. He reached for Marcus's hand, and for a brief moment, the warmth of the great flame flowed between them. Take care of the light, the Emperor whispered. Then he closed his eyes for the last time. The princess stood silently beside her father. The great flame burned bright behind them. No tears fell, not because she did not grieve, but because she understood that her father had left her a world that now had hope. The torchbearer is past. The flame never dimmed again. The forge was awake, not just with old power, but with a new pulse, human and Cthulhu together. The royal builders studied Marcus's tools. Human engineers walked the forge halls with alien scholars. It was no longer just a sacred place. It was a living star again. Marcus often stood on the balcony of the palace at night, looking up at the stars. He still wore the burning ring on his wrist. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. The princess joined him one evening. "The forge remembers you now," she said softly. "Your fire lives in it." Marcus smiled a little. "Guess we're roommates now." She tilted her head, not understanding the human joke at first, then laughed. A strange way to speak. "But yes," she looked at him seriously then. "You gave us more than a flame. You gave us courage to believe in something new." Marcus shrugged. "We just don't like the dark." She stepped closer to the balcony rail. "The galaxy will remember this. The others said it was too dangerous. It's too old. But you came anyway." He looked at the stars and said quietly, "Someone has to be the first to step forward." Across. The galaxy news spread fast. Across the galaxy, old empires and young colonies watched as Cthulhu rose again. Many had thought them finished, but now they burned brighter than ever. Other species began to whisper the same words. The humans did it. Not because humans had the most power. Not because they had the oldest history. But because they had something many others had forgotten. The stubborn will to keep a flame alive. In space stations, on colony ships, in dusty frontier towns, people began lighting small lamps at night and telling the story of the day. Human kindled a dying star. The promise one evening. Marcus and the princess returned to the forge. It was calm now. The core floated in perfect balance, glowing softly like a living star. The two stood before it in silence. "Thank you," the princess said softly. Marcus shook his head. "Don't thank me. I just did what humans always do." She raised an eyebrow. "And what is that?" He looked at the flame and smiled. "We light the dark." The princess placed her hand over the core. "Then may your people and mine light it together." Their hands rested side by side on the warm surface of the living flame. It didn't belong to one race anymore. It belonged to both. A new dawn, the day of the official coronation, arrived. The palace was bright as never before. Golden banners floated through the air. Millions gathered to see their new empress not just as ruler of an old empire, but as the bearer of a renewed flame. Marcus stood at her side as a guest of honor. The council representatives who once called it the natural end of an era now bowed their heads. The empress raised her hand, and the great flame flared above her, painting the sky gold. In our darkest hour, she spoke. A spark came from a young world. A spark that became a fire. From this day forward, Cthulhu stands with humanity, not in shadow, but in light. Marcus felt the ember on his wrist pulse once more. Strong and alive, final light that night, Marcus walked through the quiet forge alone. The core hummed softly, like it was breathing. He sat down on the floor, leaning back. Looking up at the glowing ceiling, he thought of Earth. He thought of the small fires that once kept people alive in the cold. He thought of how far humanity had come from campfires to star flames. The princess appeared behind him, crown dimmed to a soft light. "You still don't like big ceremonies?" she teased gently. Marcus smiled. "Not my thing." She sat beside him. For a long time, they just listened to the hum of the living flame. Finally, she said, "You changed the destiny of a people." He looked at the glowing core. "No, we did." The forge light wrapped around them both, warm and steady. Outside, the stars burned bright. But here, in the heart of an ancient empire, a human and an alien shared one simple truth. When the light begins to die, someone must step forward to keep it burning, and this time that someone was human. But in the courage to stand,